The battle is not won when the enemy is defeated. The battle is won before the fight begins, when your plan is so precise, your vision so clear that no force can shake it. Most people walk into life's conflicts unarmed, unready. But the masters, those who plan like warriors, they see every move before it happens. They shape outcomes by shaping preparation. In this video, I will teach you how to think like a strategist, move like a general, and win like a king. Subscribe to our channel if you're ready to master your mind, and tell us, where are you watching from? Listen carefully to what I am about to tell you, for these words carry the weight of centuries. Every day, I watch thousands of warriors march boldly into battle, their heads held high, their spirits burning bright. And every day I watch most of them fall, not because they lack strength, not because they lack courage, but because they failed to understand the most fundamental truth of warfare. The battle is won or lost before it begins. You see, in all my years commanding armies and studying the art of war, I have discovered that victory has a pattern. It is not chaos. It is not luck. It is not even about who has the larger army or the sharper sword. Victory belongs to those who see the end before the beginning. Think about this. When two armies meet on the battlefield, what do you see? You see clash and fury, blood and thunder. But I see something different. I see the echoes of decisions made months ago. I see the weight of preparation crushing the unprepared. I see the inevitable result of choices made in quiet rooms, far from the sound of drums and war cries. Most people, and I want you to hear this clearly, most people live their lives like amateur soldiers. They react, they improvise, they hope. And in doing so, they surrender their fate to the winds of chance. Is this how you want to live? Is this how you want to fight your battles? Here is what the masters know. Every great victory is built on the foundation of a perfect planning. When I prepare for war, I see it unfold in my mind 1,000 times before a single soldier moves. I consider every angle, every possibility, every weakness, both in my enemy and in myself. I plan not just for what I expect, but for what I cannot expect. This is how battles are truly won. But you might be thinking, Sun Tzu, I am not leading armies. I am fighting different battles. Let me tell you something that may surprise you. The principles remain the same. Whether you are conquering territories or building a business, whether you are leading thousands or leading only yourself, the fundamental laws of strategy do not change. The amateur sees planning as boring, as a waste of time. They are eager to act, to move, to strike. But this eagerness is their downfall. The master knows that planning is where the real battle takes place. In the quiet moments of contemplation, in the careful analysis of strength and weakness, in the patient gathering of intelligence, this is where wars are won. Let me share with you a truth that has won me 100 battles. When your planning is perfect, victory feels effortless. The enemy walks into your trap thinking it was their idea. They make exactly the moves you anticipated, thinking they are being clever. They exhaust themselves fighting shadows while you conserve your strength. This is the power of perfect planning, but there is something else you must understand. Planning is not just about creating a sequence of actions. It is about developing a way of thinking. It is about training your mind to see patterns where others see chaos, to sense weakness where others see strength, to find opportunity where others see obstacle. I have watched generals with powerful armies fall before smaller forces simply because they failed to plan properly. I have seen mighty empires crumble because their leaders confused activity with strategy. This is why I tell you now, do not be seduced by action. Do not be fooled by the urgent. The time you spend in planning is not time wasted. It is time invested in your inevitable victory. Remember this, the skillful warrior cultivates a stillness in their mind, a patience in their heart. They know that rushing into battle is the mark of an amateur. They understand that true victory is born in those quiet moments when you are alone with your thoughts, mapping out the path to success. So I challenge you now, before you take another step in your journey, before you make another move in your personal war, stop. Take a breath. Ask yourself, have I planned deeply enough? Have I considered all angles? Have I prepared for both victory and setback? Because I promise you this, the depth of your planning today will determine the height of your victory tomorrow. In the chapters that follow, I will teach you exactly how to think like a master strategist, how to plan with such precision that victory becomes not just possible, but inevitable. But first, you must commit to this truth. The war begins long before the first strike, and it is won or lost in the quiet moments of preparation. Before you can understand your enemy, before you can read the battlefield, before you can even begin to plan your victory, you must first understand yourself. This is a truth that many warriors ignore, and it costs them everything. I have seen mighty generals commanding vast armies fall to smaller forces for one simple reason. They did not know their own nature. They did not understand their own tendencies, their own weaknesses, their own patterns of thought and action. And in war, as in life, what you do not know about yourself will destroy you. Let me share with you a secret that has served me well in countless campaigns. Every morning, before I meet with my generals, before I review any battle plans, I spend time in solitude. In this quiet moment, I examine myself with the same ruthless precision I would use to examine an enemy's fortifications. I ask myself, what are my true strengths? Not what I wish them to be, not what others believe them to be, but what they truly are. This is not a comfortable process. The warrior who seeks true self-knowledge must be prepared for uncomfortable truths. You must look at yourself with clear eyes, free from illusion. Are you truly as disciplined as you claim? Are you really as brave as you pretend? Do you actually follow through on your plans, or do you abandon them when the path becomes difficult? Consider this. In every battle I have ever lost, and yes, I have lost battles, the root of defeat could be traced back to a moment where I ignored something I knew about myself. Perhaps I overestimated my troops' endurance. Perhaps I underestimated my own tendency to act hastily when provoked. These were not failures of strategy, but failures of self-knowledge. Here is what you must do. Create a map of yourself. Just as a general maps terrain before battle, you must map your inner landscape. What triggers cause you to abandon your plans? What situations make you act against your own interests? What patterns in your past victories and defeats reveal about your true capabilities? But knowing yourself is not just about identifying weaknesses. It is about understanding your unique strengths, your true advantages. Perhaps you have extraordinary patience, the ability to wait for exactly the right moment to strike. Perhaps your mind works best under pressure, finding creative solutions when others panic. These are weapons as real as any sword or spear, but you can only wield them effectively if you know they exist. Let me tell you about a young general I once knew. He was brilliant at creating complex battle plans, but he had never taken the time to understand a critical flaw in his nature. He would abandon these plans at the first sign of unexpected resistance. He did not know this about himself, and so he could not guard against it. His enemies learned to exploit this tendency, and it led to his downfall. Here is a truth that may surprise you. Your greatest strength, if not properly understood, can become your greatest weakness. Are you known for your aggression? This can be powerful, but if you do not understand when this aggression serves you, and when it betrays you, it becomes a liability. Are you praised for your caution? This too can be valuable, but if you do not know when to abandon caution for bold action, it becomes a chain that binds you. You must also understand your own capacity for growth and change. Some aspects of your nature are like bedrock, unchangeable foundations upon which you must build your strategy. Others are like rivers, capable of being redirected with sufficient effort and understanding. Knowing the difference is crucial. This is why I tell all my students, begin your journey to mastery not by studying your enemies, not by analyzing the battlefield, but by turning your gaze inward. Spend time in honest self-reflection. Document your patterns. Analyze your decisions, both those that led to victory and those that led to defeat. Create a practice of self-examination that is as regular as the rising sun. Before each major decision, ask yourself, am I choosing this path because it is truly wise or because it aligns with my comfortable patterns? Am I avoiding this approach because it is genuinely unwise or because it challenges what I believe about myself? Remember this: the warrior who knows himself has already won half the battle. The one who fights in ignorance of his own nature has already lost, no matter how strong his arm or how sharp his sword. In the chapters that follow, we will explore many strategies and tactics, but none will serve you if you do not first master this fundamental truth. Know yourself before you fight. And know this too: self-knowledge is not a destination, but a journey. The wise warrior never stops examining himself, never stops questioning his assumptions, never stops seeking deeper understanding of his own nature. This is not weakness. This is the foundation of all strength. There is a saying among the greatest generals: the land beneath your feet dictates the battle above it. In all my years of warfare, I have never seen this principle fail. Yet I watch, time and time again, as warriors rush into battle without truly understanding their environment. They see the surface but miss the depths. They notice the obvious but overlook the essential. Let me tell you what mastery of terrain truly means. It is not enough to know that a mountain is tall or a river is deep. You must understand how these elements shape the flow of battle, how they influence movement, how they create opportunities and threats. The master strategist sees terrain not as obstacles to be overcome, but as weapons to be wielded. Consider this: every environment you operate in has its own rules, its own rhythms, its own hidden advantages. In war, I teach my generals to read the land like a sacred text. Is the ground firm or soft? How does the wind blow at different times of day? Where does the sun cast shadows that could hide our movements? These details, these seemingly small observations, are often the difference between victory and defeat. But I know what you're thinking. Sun Tzu. I am not fighting on physical battlefields. Listen carefully. The principle remains the same whether you are leading armies or building enterprises. Your terrain might be the market you operate in, the industry you compete in, or the social landscape you navigate. The question is the same. Do you truly understand your environment? Let me share a strategy I have used to conquer territories. 3 times my army's strength. Before any battle, I send scouts in every direction, not just to observe the enemy, but to create a complete picture of the environment. They map every hill, every valley, every water source. They note where the ground is firm enough to support heavy cavalry and where it would swallow a marching army. They observe how the terrain changes with weather and time of day. You must do the same in your own battles. What are the forces that shape your environment? What are the trends that influence your field? Where are the opportunities that others have overlooked? What are the hidden dangers that could destroy an unprepared warrior? Here is a truth that has served me well. The environment itself is neutral. It becomes an advantage or disadvantage only through your understanding and use of it. I have seen small forces defeat larger armies by using terrain to their advantage. I have watched mighty armies fall because they failed to respect the environment they fought in. Consider the story of a general I once knew. He was brilliant in open battle, but he failed to notice how the nearby mountains affected the weather patterns. His army was caught in a sudden storm that his local enemies knew to expect. His failure to read the terrain cost him not just the battle, but his entire campaign. This is why I tell you, become a student of your environment. Study it with the dedication of a scholar and the patience of a monk. Learn its patterns, its cycles, its hidden characteristics. What seems like a disadvantage to the amateur can become a powerful weapon in the hands of a master who truly understands their terrain. But remember this: environments are not static. They change, they evolve, they transform. The wise warrior understands not just how the terrain is today, but how it might change tomorrow. In war, I teach my commanders to anticipate how rain might turn solid ground to mud, how winter might freeze river crossings, how summer heat might affect troop movement. You must develop this same level of environmental awareness in your own domain. How might changing technology affect your field? How might shifting social trends impact your strategy? How might economic cycles influence your battles? These are not academic questions. They are the foundation of strategic mastery. Here is a practice I demand of all my generals. Before making any major decision, they must walk the battlefield themselves. Not just once, but at different times of day, in different weather conditions. They must feel the ground beneath their feet, sense the flow of wind, understand how light and shadow play across the land. You must develop a similar intimacy with your own terrain. Immerse yourself in your environment. Study it not just with your mind, but with all your senses. Learn to read the subtle signs that others miss. Understand the hidden connections that shape outcomes. And know this: the master of terrain is never surprised. They have already considered how the environment might change, how it might be used against them, how it might suddenly transform from advantage to threat. This is not paranoia, it is preparation. Remember, no soldier fights in a vacuum, no battle takes place in isolation. The environment shapes every conflict, influences every outcome, determines every victory or defeat. Your mastery of terrain, your deep understanding of your environment, is not just an advantage, it is a necessity. In the chapters that follow, we will explore many strategies for victory, but they will mean nothing if you do not first master this fundamental principle. Know your terrain as intimately as you know yourself. For in the end, it is not the strongest warrior who wins, it is the one who best understands and uses their environment. Of all the principles I have taught through the centuries, this may be the most crucial. To achieve perfect victory, you must understand your enemy completely, not just their weapons, not just their tactics, but their very nature. For in every conflict, whether on the battlefield or in the marketplace, you are not fighting against strategies or resources. You are fighting against human nature itself. Listen carefully, for what I am about to share with you has toppled empires and raised kingdoms from dust. The greatest weapon in any warrior's arsenal is not the sword, but understanding. When you truly understand your enemy, their every move becomes predictable, their strengths become weaknesses, their secrets become obvious signs. But here is what most fail to grasp. Understanding your enemy begins long before you meet them in battle. I have won wars without lifting a sword, simply because I knew exactly how my opponent would react to certain situations. I knew their pride would blind them to obvious traps. I knew their fear would make them hesitate at crucial moments. I knew their greed would lead them exactly where I wanted them to go. Let me share with you the method I used to understand every enemy I have ever faced. First, you must study their patterns. Every human being, no matter how unpredictable they seem, follows patterns. They have habits they cannot break, reactions they cannot control, beliefs they cannot question. These patterns are like tracks in the snow, invisible to the casual observer, but clear as day to the trained eye. When I prepare to face an enemy, I ask these questions. What do they value most? What do they fear most? What do they believe about themselves that might not be true? The answers to these questions are worth more than 1,000 spies or 10,000 soldiers. Consider this. I once defeated a powerful general, not through superior force, but because I understood something fundamental about his nature. He had never lost a direct confrontation, and this made him predictable. He would always choose to meet strength with strength. Knowing this, I laid a trap that appealed to his pride. He walked right into it, believing he was making his own choice. Here's a truth that most warriors never learn. Your enemy's greatest strength is often where they are most vulnerable. The proud can be manipulated through their pride. The cautious can be paralyzed by their caution. The aggressive can be led to destroy themselves through their aggression. But you can only use these truths if you first take the time to understand them deeply. You must also understand that every enemy operates under constraints they may not even recognize. They have beliefs that limit their options. They have fears that narrow their choices. They have blind spots they cannot see. Your task is to identify these invisible chains that bind them. But remember this, understanding your enemy is not about judgment. The moment you begin to look down on your opponent, you become blind to their true nature. I have seen countless warriors fall because they despise their enemy too much to understand them. Respect your opponent enough to study them carefully, but know them well enough to defeat them completely. Here is another secret that has served me well. People reveal their true nature not in moments of strength, but in moments of stress. Watch how your opponents handle small setbacks. Notice how they react to unexpected challenges. These moments tell you everything you need to know about how they will behave in crucial battles. You must also learn to read what is not said, to see what is not shown. Every enemy has a gap between who they pretend to be and who they truly are. Find this gap, and you find their weakness. Listen not just to their words, but to the silence between their words. Watch not just their actions, but the hesitation before their actions. I teach my generals to create detailed portraits of their enemies, not just their military capabilities, but their personal histories, their private fears, their secret ambitions. What events shaped them? What victories made them overconfident? What defeats still haunt them? This is not idle curiosity, it is strategic necessity. Consider this practice. Before any major confrontation, spend as much time understanding your enemy as you do preparing your own forces. Study their past battles, not just what they did, but why they did it. Look for patterns in their decision-making. What makes them rush? What makes them hesitate? What makes them abandon their own plans? But here is perhaps the most important lesson. Human nature does not change. The same basic drives that motivated warriors thousands of years ago, fear, pride, ambition, insecurity, still drive people today. Learn to read these fundamental human patterns, and you will understand not just one enemy, but all enemies. Remember this, the perfect strategist doesn't fight against their enemy's strengths. They don't even fight against their enemy's weaknesses. They fight against their enemy's nature. They set up situations where their opponent's own characteristics lead them to defeat. In the chapters that follow, we will explore many techniques and tactics, but they will all build upon this fundamental truth. Know your enemy's nature, and victory becomes inevitable. For when you truly understand someone, they can hide nothing from you. Their every move becomes a signal, their every decision a confirmation of what you already know. And know this above all, the study of human nature is never complete. Each enemy brings new lessons, new insights, new understanding. The wise warrior never stops learning, never stops observing, never stops seeking deeper understanding of the humans they must face in battle. And all my years of warfare, I have witnessed a truth so fundamental, yet so often ignored. A vague objective breeds certain defeat. An army without a clear goal is not an army at all. It is merely a crowd with weapons. The same holds true in any battle you might face. Clarity of purpose is not just important. It is everything. Let me share with you a secret that has won me countless victories. Before I ever draw up battle plans, before I position a single soldier, I ensure that my objective is so clear it could be written in a single breath. Not win the war, that is too vague. Not defeat the enemy, that is too general. My objectives are precise, like a well-crafted arrow. Take the eastern ridge by dawn to control the valley's supply routes. You see, precision in your objective creates power in your execution. When your goal is crystal clear, every decision becomes simpler, every choice more obvious, every action more decisive. But when your objective is clouded by uncertainty or compromise, you scatter your force like leaves in the wind. I once knew a general who told his army they would fight for victory. He lost 3 battles in succession. Why? Because victory meant different things to different parts of his force. Some fought for territory, others for glory, still others for revenge. Their efforts, though valiant, worked against each other. They had motion without direction, action without purpose. Here's the method I use to define objectives that command success. First, strip away all ambiguity. If your objective cannot be understood by a simple soldier in a single hearing, it is not yet clear enough. Second, ensure it is measurable. You must know without doubt when you have achieved it. Third, make it meaningful enough to command. Total commitment. But remember this, your objective must be both ambitious and achievable. I have seen armies destroyed because their leaders set impossible goals, and I have watched forces waste away because their objectives were too easy to inspire real effort. The perfect objective sits at the razor's edge between these extremes. Consider this practice. Write your objective in 1 sentence. Then remove every word that isn't absolutely necessary. What remains should be clear as mountain spring water. If any confusion remains, if any question could be asked about your meaning, you must refine it further. Let me tell you about a battle I once won before it began. I gathered my generals and gave them an objective so clear, so precise, that every man could see it in his mind's eye. We will take the fortress on Phoenix Hill within 3 days, capturing the granary intact. Not a single soldier had to question what success looked like. Not a single commander had to wonder about their role. The clarity of our purpose became the foundation of our victory. Here is another truth that most fail to grasp. Your objective must align with reality. I have watched leaders set goals that ignored the terrain, dismissed the weather, or defied human nature itself. Their clarity became their prison, their precision their downfall. Your objective must respect the laws of war, the limits of human endurance, and the nature of your enemy. You must also understand this. A clear objective acts like a flame in darkness. It draws power to itself. When people understand exactly what they are fighting for, when they can see the goal as clearly as they see their own hands, they find strength they didn't know they had. Clarity creates commitment, and commitment creates power. But there is more. Your objective must be flexible enough to survive contact with reality, yet rigid enough to maintain its essential purpose. Think of it as a spear shaft. It can bend without breaking, but it never loses its direction. When conditions change, as they always do, your objective should adapt without losing its core truth. This is why I teach my commanders to create objectives that are clear in purpose, but flexible in execution. Take the hill by dawn is clear in what must be achieved, but allows for different methods of achievement. Take the hill by dawn using only cavalry is too rigid and may shatter when it meets reality. Remember this, the power of a clear objective extends beyond the battlefield. It shapes preparation, it guides training, it influences every decision made before the first sword is drawn. When your objective is crystal clear, your entire force begins to move in harmony like a single body, guided by a single mind. Here is a practice I demand of all who serve under me. Before any significant action, speak your objective aloud. If you stumble over the words, if you have to explain or clarify, your objective is not yet clear enough. Refine it until it rings with the clarity of a temple bell. And know this, the process of clarifying your objective is itself a form of warfare. You are fighting against vagueness, against compromise, against the temptation to please everyone with a goal so broad it pleases no one. This battle must be won before any other can begin. In the chapters that follow, we will explore many aspects of strategy and tactics, but they all rest upon this foundation. A clear objective is the first victory. Without it, All other victories are impossible. With it, even defeat becomes merely a step toward ultimate success. There is an ancient saying among warriors, "Sweat more in training, bleed less in battle." But I tell you this, true preparation goes far beyond training. It is a state of being, a way of thinking that transforms the very nature of conflict. When preparation is perfect, victory feels like destiny. Let me share with you the deepest secret of preparation that I have learned in all my years of warfare. The battle is won or lost in the quiet hours before anyone draws a sword. It is won in the meticulous checking of equipment, in the careful study of maps, in the thousand small decisions that seem insignificant at the time but cascade into either triumph or disaster. I have watched armies twice the size of mine crumble because they failed to prepare properly. They had stronger weapons, more soldiers, better positions, but they failed to sharpen their blades, failed to secure their supply lines, failed to rest their troops. These are not merely mistakes, they are surrender disguised as confidence. Here is how I prepare for battle, a method that has never failed me. First, I create systems for everything. Nothing is left to chance. Every soldier knows not just what to do, but why they do it. Every commander understands not just their orders, but the reasoning behind them. Every action has a purpose. Every purpose has a backup plan. And every backup plan has been tested. Consider this story. I once faced an enemy who outnumbered my forces 3-1. They were certain of victory. After all, how could they lose with such superior numbers? But in the months before the battle, I had prepared my troops with a system of signals that allowed them to move as one body, to shift formation with the speed of thought. When the battle came, we moved like water, while they moved like stone. Their numbers became their weakness, their confidence their trap. But remember this, preparation is not about eliminating uncertainty. It is about creating systems that function even in chaos. I teach my generals to prepare for both victory and defeat, for clear skies and storms, for obedient troops and rebellious ones. The amateur prepares for what they expect to happen. The master prepares for what could happen. Here is the method I use to create unshakable preparation. First, identify every critical point of failure. Where could things go wrong? What assumptions are you making? What if your strength becomes a weakness? Then, create systems to address each point. Not just plans, systems. Plans can fail. Systems adapt. You must understand this crucial difference. A plan is a sequence of actions. A system is a way of thinking and operating that produces the right actions automatically. When I prepare my armies, I don't just give them plans. I install systems of behavior that become as natural as breathing. Consider how I train my archers. They don't just practice shooting arrows. They practice setting up their position in any terrain. They practice in rain, in wind, in darkness. They practice maintaining their equipment, reading the weather, calculating distances. By the time battle comes, their actions are not decisions. They are instincts shaped by systems of preparation. But there is more to preparation than systems. You must also create the right state of mind. This is why I insist on this practice. Every evening my commanders gather to review what they think they know. They challenge their assumptions. They question their confidence. They look for gaps in their preparation. This is not doubt. It is wisdom. Let me share another secret. The deepest preparation happens in the mind. Before any battle, I ensure that every soldier understands not just what they must do, but why they must do it. When people understand the why, they can adapt the what. When they only know the what, they become lost the moment plans change. Here is something most leaders never grasp. Preparation builds confidence, but overconfidence destroys preparation. I have seen generals so certain of victory that they stopped preparing, stopped questioning, stopped improving. Their confidence became their weakness, their certainty, their vulnerability. This is why I teach this paradox. Prepare as if victory is impossible, then act as if victory is inevitable. In the preparation phase, be paranoid. Question everything. Test everything. Leave no possibility unexplored. But once preparation is complete, move with absolute conviction. Remember this: true preparation is invisible to the untrained eye. The amateur looks for big gestures, dramatic actions, visible signs of readiness. The master knows that real preparation lies in the details, the countless small decisions and habits that create an overwhelming advantage. And know this: preparation never truly ends. Even in victory, the wise warrior is preparing for the next battle. Even in peace, they are sharpening their sword, strengthening their systems, improving their methods. This is not paranoia. It is the way of the master. In the chapters that follow, we will explore many aspects of victory, but they all rest upon this truth: perfect preparation makes difficult things easy, impossible things possible. When you prepare properly, victory is not a surprise. It is simply the natural outcome of your systems functioning as designed. All warfare is based on deception. This is not merely a principle. It is the foundation upon which all strategy is built. Yet I watch as warrior after warrior, leader after leader, fails to grasp its true meaning. They think deception means merely hiding their strength or showing false weakness. But I tell you this: true deception is an art that transforms the very nature of conflict. Listen carefully, for I am about to share with you the deepest secrets of strategic deception that I have gathered through centuries of warfare. The first and most crucial truth is this: deception is not about lies. It is about controlling what your enemy believes to be true. The most powerful deception is often simply allowing your opponent to believe what they already want to believe. I once won a battle by having my troops light 5,000 campfires when I had only 500 men. But the true deception was not in the fires. It was in understanding that my enemy's pride would prevent them from believing I would dare to attempt such an obvious trick. They saw exactly what I showed them, but their own nature deceived them more thoroughly than I ever could. Here is the method I use to create perfect deception. First, understand what your opponent expects to see. Their expectations are the canvas upon which you will paint your false picture. Second, understand what they fear and what they desire. These are the colors you will use. Third, give them a truth so obvious that they never think to question what lies beneath it. Consider this principle: the strongest deception is built on a foundation of truth. When I want to appear weak, I show real weakness, but I choose which weakness to show. When I want to appear strong, I display real strength, but I control where and how it is seen. The amateur deceives with lies. The master deceives with truth, carefully selected and perfectly presented. But remember this: deception is not about complexity. The more elaborate your deception, the more likely it is to fail. I have seen brilliant plans collapse because they required too many things to go perfectly right. The best deception is like a clear pond. The surface is perfectly transparent, revealing nothing of its true depth. Let me share a story that illustrates this principle. I once faced an enemy who had studied all my tactics, who thought they knew every trick in my arsenal. So I used the simplest deception of all. I did exactly what they expected me to do, but not for the reasons they expected. They were so busy looking for complexity that they missed the simple truth that would have saved them. Here is another secret that few ever grasp. The purpose of deception is not just to hide your plans, it is to make your enemy an active participant in their own defeat. When deception is perfect, your opponent will convince themselves of whatever you want them to believe. They will argue against those who try to warn them. They will dismiss evidence that contradicts their beliefs. Consider this practice. Before implementing any deception, ask yourself, what does my enemy already believe? What do they want to believe? What do they fear might be true? Then, craft your deception to align with these existing beliefs and fears. The best deception requires minimal effort because it uses the enemy's own mind against them. But there is more you must understand. Deception is not a single act. It is a system of coordinated truths and falsehoods that work together to create an overwhelming effect. Every truth you show should support your deception. Every lie should be protected by a wall of verified facts. Every action should reinforce what you want your enemy to believe. Here's a method I teach my generals. Create layers of deception, each protecting and reinforcing the others. The outer layer is what everyone can see. Let it be believable, even obvious. The next layer is what clever enemies will discover with some effort. Let it be a deception that flatters their intelligence. The deepest layer is your true intention, protected by your enemy's confidence that they have already discovered your secret. You must also understand this. The timing of deception is as important as its content. Reveal too much too soon, and you give your enemy time to uncover the truth. Move too late, and you miss the opportunity to shape their beliefs. The perfect deception unfolds like a flower, each petal opening at exactly the right moment. Consider how I use this principle. When I want my enemy to believe I am weak, I begin showing signs of weakness long before I plan to strike. Small retreats, minor defeats, visible confusion, all carefully orchestrated to build a picture that will blind them to my true strength. By the time I move against them, their belief in my weakness is too deep to be shaken by evidence of my power. But remember this warning. Every deception creates a debt that must be paid in vigilance. The more elaborate your false reality, the more energy you must spend maintaining it. This is why simple deceptions are often the most powerful. They require less maintenance, create fewer opportunities for mistakes, and generate fewer contradictions that must be explained. Here is another truth that most never grasp. The greatest deception often lies not in what you show or hide, but in what you allow your enemy to discover on their own. When people uncover what they believe is hidden truth, they cling to that belief with unshakable conviction. They trust what they think they have discovered far more than what they have been told. This is why I teach this strategy. Let your enemies spy on you. Let them steal what appear to be secret plans. Let them intercept what seem to be private communications, but control what they find. The best way to convince an enemy that they know your plans is to let them work to discover false ones. And know this above all. The master of deception must also master honesty. You must know when truth serves your purpose better than any lie. You must know when transparent action will be dismissed as deception while deception would be accepted as truth. This is not contradiction. It is the highest form of strategic thinking. In the chapters that follow, we will explore many weapons of warfare. But remember this, deception is not merely one weapon among many. It is the blade that sharpens all others. When wielded with skill and wisdom, it transforms every aspect of conflict, making the impossible possible and the obvious misleading. There is a moment in every battle, every conflict, every endeavor when victory becomes possible. The master strategist sees this moment before it arrives. The amateur sees it only after it has passed. This, above all else, is what separates those who achieve perfect victory from those who merely fight well. Let me share with you the deepest truth I have learned about timing. It is not about being fast or slow, early or late. It is about being precisely right. I have watched swift armies rush to their doom because they moved too soon. I have seen powerful forces wither because they waited too long. Perfect timing is like catching a falling sword. A moment too soon or too late leads to disaster. Consider this. In nature, every force has its rhythm. The tide has its time. The seasons have their cycle. Even the fiercest storm has its moment of greatest intensity. So too does every conflict have its critical moment, what I call the ripeness of time. This is when your strength and your enemy's weakness align perfectly, when the terrain and circumstances favor your strategy completely. I once won a battle against an army 3 times my size by understanding this principle. For 6 days, I watched them grow stronger, watched them celebrate their apparent advantage. Others urged me to attack, fearing they would become too powerful. But I saw what others did not. Their very strength was making them weak. On the seventh day, when their confidence had made them careless, and their abundance had made them soft, I struck. Their size became their weakness, their strength, their vulnerability. Here is the method I use to master timing. First, understand the natural rhythms of your situation. What forces are building? What energies are declining? What patterns are cycling? Second, identify the moments when these rhythms align with your advantage. Third, prepare everything so that when the moment comes, you can act with the suddenness of lightning. But remember this crucial truth. Perfect timing requires perfect patience. The amateur is always eager to move, always rushing toward action. The master knows that waiting is also a form of warfare. Sometimes the most powerful move is to remain still while your enemy exhausts themselves, while circumstances shift in your favor, while opportunity ripens to perfection. Let me share another secret of timing that few ever grasp. The right moment often appears wrong to others. I have ordered attacks when my generals thought we should defend, held back when they urged advance. This is because true strategic timing is not based on what is obvious to all. It is based on seeing the invisible currents that shape events. Consider this practice. Before any major action, identify three things. What makes this moment right for action? What could make it wrong? And what would make it perfect? Then, wait until these elements align. The amateur rushes to act when conditions are merely good. The master waits for them to become perfect. Here is a truth that has served me well. Timing is not just about when to act. It is about the rhythm of your actions. Just as a master swordsman knows the rhythm of attack and defense, the perfect strategist understands the rhythm of engagement and withdrawal, of pressure and release, of action and preparation. You must also understand this. Different aspects of your strategy may require different timing. I teach my commanders to see conflict like a complex piece of music. Each element has its own rhythm, but all must work together in harmony. Your supply lines have their timing. Your troop movements have their timing. Your deceptions have their timing. Perfect victory comes when all these rhythms synchronize. Consider how I use this principle. When I plan a campaign, I create a timeline not just of actions, but of ripeness. This position will be perfect at dawn. That strategy will work best during rain. This deception needs 3 days to take root. That advantage will peak when the moon is full. By understanding these natural rhythms, I can orchestrate events rather than merely react to them. But here is the deepest truth about timing. It is not enough to know when to act. You must also know how long to act. Every action has its natural duration. Press too long, and strength becomes weakness. End too soon, and victory slips away. The master strategist feels this rhythm instinctively, knows exactly how long to maintain each position, each strategy, each deception. Remember this, time is like terrain. It has its high ground and its valleys, its firm paths and its quicksand. Just as a wise general chooses favorable ground for battle, the master strategist chooses favorable moments for action. But unlike terrain, time cannot be scouted directly. It must be sensed through understanding, predicted through wisdom. Here is another truth that most never grasp. The perception of time changes with circumstance. To your eager troops, an hour of waiting feels like a day. To your exhausted enemy, a day of peace feels like an hour. The master of timing understands these psychological rhythms and uses them to advantage. And know this above all, perfect timing cannot be rushed. It cannot be forced. It must be allowed to ripen naturally like fruit on a tree. Your task is not to make the moment come sooner. It is to prepare so perfectly that when the right moment arrives, nothing can prevent your victory. In the chapters that follow, we will explore many aspects of strategy. But remember this, without mastery of timing, all other skills become meaningless. The strongest army in the world will fall if. It moves at the wrong moment. The weakest force can triumph if it strikes when time itself becomes its ally. The supreme art of war is not about dominating your enemy. It is about dominating position. This truth has won me more battles than all the swords and spears in China. Yet I watch as warrior after warrior, leader after leader chases their opponents across the battlefield, never understanding that position is power, and power flows to those who know how to claim it. Listen carefully, for I am about to share with you the deepest secrets of positioning that I have gathered through centuries of warfare. When you truly understand position, you will never again waste energy fighting against force. Instead, you will learn to place yourself where victory flows to you as naturally as water flows downhill. Consider this fundamental truth. Every space, every situation has its points of power. In battle, these might be high ground, narrow passes, or protected flanks. In business, they might be market positions, resource controls, or information advantages. The master strategist sees these power points before others even know they exist. I once won a battle against an army 5 times my size without losing a single soldier. How? Not through superior weapons or tactics, but through perfect positioning. I placed my forces at a point where the enemy's numbers became their weakness, where their strength became their burden. They had to cross a narrow valley to reach. Their vast army became nothing more than a trickle of men we could defeat in detail. Here is the method I used to master positioning. First, understand the natural flow of power in your situation. Where do advantages naturally accumulate? Where do weaknesses naturally appear? Second, identify positions that control these flows. Third, move to occupy these positions before others recognize their importance. But remember this crucial principle. Position is not just about where you are, it is about where you are in relation to everything else. I teach my generals to see the battlefield as a web of relationships, not just a map of locations. Your position is strong or weak not by itself, but in relation to your enemy's position, your supply lines, your routes of retreat, your potential reinforcements. Let me share another secret of positioning that few ever grasp. The strongest position is often not the most obvious one. I have watched armies fight over high ground while ignoring the small hill that controlled their supply lines. I have seen leaders chase prestigious positions while leaving themselves vulnerable to attack from unexpected directions. Consider this practice. Before choosing any position, ask yourself 3 questions. First, what does this position allow me to control? Second, what does this position prevent my enemy from doing? Third, how difficult would it be for my enemy to dislodge me from this position? The perfect position scores highly on all 3 measures. Here is a truth that has served me well. The value of a position changes with time and circumstance. Our position that is strong in summer might be weak in winter. A position that is powerful against one enemy might be vulnerable against another. The master of positioning understands these shifts and moves accordingly. You must also understand this. Positioning is not just about physical location. It is about psychological position, strategic position, informational position. I have won battles by positioning myself as weak when I was strong, as foolish when I was wise, as desperate when I was confident. These positions of perception can be as powerful as any physical advantage. Consider how I use this principle. When I plan a campaign, I create layers of positioning. The outer layer is physical, where my troops will stand, where my supplies will flow. The next layer is strategic, how my positions support each other, how they constrain my enemy's options. The deepest layer is psychological, how my positions affect my enemy's perception, confidence, and decision-making. But here is the deepest truth about positioning. The perfect position is one that makes conflict unnecessary. When your positioning is sublime, your enemies look at their options and choose not to fight. They see that any attack would be too costly, any victory too expensive. This is the ultimate achievement of strategic positioning. Remember this: position is like water. It naturally flows to the lowest point. The wise strategist does not fight against this natural flow. Instead, they understand it, work with it, use it to their advantage. They place themselves where strength naturally accumulates, where power naturally concentrates. Here's another truth that most never grasp. The strongest position is often one that appears weak to others. I have placed my armies in positions that my enemies thought vulnerable, only to reveal that these positions gave us perfect control of the battlefield. The amateur looks for positions that project strength. The master looks for positions that control outcomes. And know this above all: perfect positioning cannot be achieved through force alone. It requires deep understanding, careful preparation, and precise timing. You must read the terrain of your situation: physical, strategic, and psychological. You must see the flows of power and advantage. You must understand where strength naturally accumulates and where weakness naturally appears. In the chapters that follow, we will explore many aspects of strategy, but remember this: without mastery of positioning, all other advantages become meaningless. The strongest army in the world will fall if it fights from the wrong position. The weakest force can triumph if it controls the critical points that determine victory. The fool rushes into danger thinking it brave. The coward flees from risk thinking it wise. But I tell you this: the master strategist understands that risk is neither to be courted nor avoided. It is to be calculated, measured, and used with surgical precision. This understanding has preserved armies and toppled empires. Listen carefully, for I am about to share with you the deepest truths about risk that I have gathered through centuries of warfare. The first and most crucial understanding is this: every action carries risk, including inaction. The question is never whether to take risks, it is how to take the right risks at the right time for the right reasons. I once watched a mighty army destroy itself because its general confused recklessness with courage. He led his forces across a river during a storm, believing that his boldness would surprise the enemy. Instead, he surprised only himself when the waters rose and split his army in two. His enemy didn't need to fight. They simply watched as nature punished his foolishness. Here is the method I use to master risk. First, identify every possible danger in a situation. Not just the obvious threats, but the hidden ones, the distant ones, the ones that seem unlikely but would be devastating if they occurred. Second, calculate the true cost of each risk, not just the immediate price of failure, but all the rippling consequences that would follow. Third, measure these risks against the potential rewards, understanding that the greatest victories often require walking the finest lines. Consider this principle: risk is not a single entity. It is a web of interconnected possibilities. When I plan a campaign, I don't just consider the risk of losing a battle. I consider the risk of winning too easily and becoming overconfident. I consider the risk of victory costing so much that it becomes indistinguishable from defeat. I consider the risk of success breeding enemies I cannot yet see. But remember this crucial truth: the calculation of risk is not merely mathematical. It must account for human nature, for chaos, for the countless small factors that can cascade into major consequences. I have seen perfect plans fail because they didn't account for a single soldier's fear, a single messenger's delay, a single cloud's appearance at the wrong moment. Let me share another secret about risk that few ever grasp: the appearance of risk can be as useful as risk itself. I have won battles by appearing to take foolish risks, knowing that my enemy would assume I had hidden advantages they couldn't see. I have gained victories by appearing to be cautious when I was actually being bold, letting my enemy's assumptions blind them to my true intentions. Consider this practice. Before taking any significant action, create what I call a risk map. Draw out every possible consequence, every potential reaction, every hidden danger. Then, draw the connections between these elements. See how one risk feeds into another, how danger in one area creates vulnerability in another. Only when you can see this entire web of possibility are you ready to make your decision. Here's a truth that has served me well. The greatest risk often lies not in what you can see, but in what you think you know for certain. I have watched generals march to their doom, not because they failed to see danger, but because they were too certain of their own assumptions to consider alternatives. The most dangerous risk is the one hidden behind your confidence. You must also understand this. Risk cannot be eliminated. It can only be transferred, transformed, or transcended. When I appear to remove risk from one area of my strategy, I'm actually moving it to another area where I can control it better. The master strategist doesn't seek to avoid all risks. They seek to choose their risks carefully and face them from positions of advantage. Consider how I use this principle. When I must take a great risk, I first create layers of smaller, controlled risks that will reveal whether my larger gamble is likely to succeed. Like a master carpenter testing wood before making the crucial cut, I probe and test before committing to irreversible action. But here is the deepest truth about risk. The perfect calculation of risk requires perfect self-knowledge. You must know not just the capabilities of your forces, but their breaking points. Not just their strengths, but their hidden weaknesses. Not just their courage, but the exact point where that courage might turn to fear. Remember this, risk is like fire. It can warm you or burn you, cook your food or consume your house. The difference lies not in the fire itself, but in how skillfully you control it. The master strategist uses risk as carefully as a master chef. Uses fire with respect, with precision, with constant awareness. Here is another truth that most never grasp. The assessment of risk must be dynamic, not static. What was safe yesterday might be dangerous today. What seems dangerous now might be your salvation tomorrow. The wise strategist constantly reassesses, constantly recalculates, constantly adjusts their understanding of risk as circumstances change. And know this above all. The mastery of risk is not about becoming comfortable with danger. It is about becoming precise in your understanding of it. The brave fool and the paralyzed coward both fail to see risk clearly. The master strategist sees it exactly as it is, no more frightening or less dangerous than reality demands. In the chapters that follow, we will explore many aspects of strategy. But remember this. Without mastery of risk, all other skills become pathways to destruction. The strongest army in the world will fall if it takes the wrong risks. The weakest force can triumph if it understands precisely which risks to take and which to avoid. In all my years of warfare, I have learned this truth. Victory does not belong to the strongest, but to those who best conserve and direct their strength. I have watched powerful armies exhaust themselves into defeat, while smaller forces achieved victory through perfect economy of action. This is the art of energy conservation, and it is the secret that separates the master strategist from the mere warrior. Listen carefully, for I am about to share with you the deepest principles of energy conservation that I have gathered through centuries of battle. The first and most crucial understanding is this. Every expenditure of energy, whether physical, mental, or strategic, must produce more value than it costs. Anything else is not warfare, it is waste. I once defeated an army 3 times my size by understanding this principle. They exhausted themselves with elaborate maneuvers, constant movement, and aggressive probes of our defenses. When the decisive moment came, they had nothing left. My forces, having conserved their strength, swept them from the field with a single, perfectly timed strike. Here is the method I use to master energy conservation. First, identify every source of power at your disposal, not just obvious strength, but all forms of advantage, influence, and capability. Second, examine every way this power could be applied, measuring not just immediate effects, but long-term consequences. Third, Choose only those actions that produce the maximum effect with the minimum expenditure. Consider this fundamental truth. Energy, once spent, cannot be easily recovered. When I plan a campaign, I think not just about how to use my strength, but how to preserve it, how to regenerate it, how to make it last longer than my enemy thinks possible. The amateur thinks only about applying power. The master thinks about conserving it. But remember this crucial principle. Conservation of energy does not mean inaction. It means precise action. I have won battles with a single movement that others would have fought with 1,000. The key is not to minimize action, but to maximize the effect of every action you take. Let me share another secret about energy conservation that few ever grasp. The appearance of activity can be as draining as activity itself. I have watched armies exhaust themselves maintaining an appearance of strength, their soldiers tired not from fighting, but from endless displays of readiness to fight. True conservation includes managing perceptions with minimal effort. Consider this practice. Before any significant action, ask yourself 3 questions. First, is this expenditure of energy necessary? Second, is this the most efficient way to achieve the desired effect? Third, could this same result be achieved with less effort through better timing, positioning, or strategy? Only when all 3 questions are answered satisfactorily should you proceed. Here is a truth that has served me well. The conservation of energy applies not just to physical force, but to every aspect of warfare. Your resources, your troops' morale, your own mental clarity, all these are forms of energy that must be carefully conserved and precisely directed. The master strategist manages all these forms of energy as carefully as a master physician manages the body's vital forces. You must also understand this. Different forms of energy have different patterns of expenditure and recovery. Physical energy might be quickly spent, but also quickly recovered. Strategic advantage might take long to build, but be lost in an instant. Mental clarity might seem endless until suddenly it fails. The wise commander understands these patterns and works with them, not against them. Consider how I use this principle. When I must maintain pressure on an enemy, I create systems that require minimal energy to sustain. Like a river wearing away a stone, I achieve my effects through persistent but gentle pressure rather than sudden force. This allows me to maintain my effort long after others would have exhausted themselves. But here is the deepest truth about energy conservation. The perfect application of force often appears effortless to others. I have won victories that seemed so natural, so inevitable, that observers could not understand the skill involved. This is the highest achievement, to make the complex appear simple, to make the difficult appear easy. Remember this, energy flows like water. It follows the path of least resistance. The amateur fights against this natural flow, constantly pushing, constantly struggling. The master understands these natural patterns and works with them, achieving maximum effect with minimum effort. Here is another truth that most never grasp. The conservation of energy requires perfect timing. The same action that wastes energy at one moment might be perfectly efficient at another. I have won battles with subtle gestures that would have required massive force if attempted at any other time. And know this above all, the mastery of energy conservation is not about being weak or passive. It is about being precisely powerful. It is about understanding that every drop of strength, every moment of effort, every resource at your disposal is precious and must be used with perfect efficiency. In the chapters that follow, we will explore many aspects of strategy. But remember this, without mastery of energy conservation, all other advantages will eventually exhaust themselves. The strongest army in the world will fall if it wastes its strength. The weakest force can triumph if it conserves and directs its energy with perfect precision. In the midst of chaos, there is a power that few understand and even fewer master, the power of silence. Not merely the absence of sound, but the discipline of perfect stillness in action, thought, and strategy. I have won more battles through silence than through the clash of swords, yet I watch as warriors and leaders constantly betray themselves through unnecessary noise. Listen carefully, for I am about to share with you the deepest truths about silence that I have gathered through centuries of warfare. The first and most crucial understanding is this: silence is not passive. It is a form of power, a weapon more precise than any blade, more protective than any armor. I once destroyed an enemy's entire strategy without lifting a weapon. How? Through perfect silence. They sent spies to discover my plans. I gave them nothing. They watched for signs of my intention. I showed none. They waited for me to make a mistake. I remained still. In their desperation to pierce my silence, they destroyed themselves with their own assumptions. Here is the method I use to master. Silence first. Understand that every word, every action, every signal you send reveals something to your opponents. Second, recognize that what you do not say, do not do, do not reveal, is often more powerful than what you express. Third, learn to act with such precision that your movements create no unnecessary ripples in the pond of circumstance. Consider this fundamental truth. In nature, the most dangerous predators are the quietest. They do not announce their presence. They do not boast of their strength. They do not warn of their attack. The lion's roar may inspire fear, but it is the silent leopard that most often catches its prey. But remember this crucial principle. The practice of silence is not mere secrecy. It is the art of controlling information, controlling perception, controlling the very rhythm of warfare. When you master silence, you control what others know, what they believe, and therefore what they do. Let me share another secret about silence that few ever grasp. True silence must exist on many levels. There is physical silence, the discipline of movement without sound. There is strategic silence, the art of action without revelation. There is mental silence, the mastery of thought without distraction. Each form of silence has its own power, its own purpose, its own perfect application. Consider this practice. Before breaking your silence in any way, through word, action, or signal, ask yourself 3 questions. First, is this communication necessary? Second, what advantage does it give my enemy if they learn this? Third, what advantage do I lose by revealing this now? Only when the benefit truly outweighs the power of silence should you speak or act. Here is a truth that has served me well. Silence creates pressure in others. When you maintain perfect silence, your opponents begin to fill the void with their own fears, their own assumptions, their own mistakes. I have watched mighty generals unravel their own plans simply because they could not bear the pressure of my silence. You must also understand this. Different moments require different forms of silence. Sometimes you must be silent like the mountain, obvious yet unreadable. Other times you must be silent like the wind, present yet unseeable. And sometimes you must be silent like the depths of the ocean, powerful yet completely hidden. Consider how I use this principle. When I plan a campaign, I create layers of silence. The outer layer is obvious, what my troops do not say, what my armies do not show. The next layer is strategic, the patterns and preparations I keep hidden. The deepest layer is intentional, the true purpose that lies beneath all other purposes, known only to me. But here is the deepest truth about silence. Perfect silence requires perfect self-control. You must master not just your words and actions, but your thoughts, your emotions, your very presence. The slightest ripple of uncertainty, the smallest sign of intention, can break the power of silence. Remember this. Silence is like the space between heartbeats. It is where power gathers, where strength builds, where victory takes root. The amateur fills every moment with noise, every silence with activity, every pause with movement. The master knows that power flows into silence just as water flows into empty spaces. Here's another truth that most never grasp. The discipline of silence must be maintained even in victory. I have seen countless warriors destroy perfect victories by celebrating too soon, by revealing too much, by abandoning their silence in the moment of triumph. The true master maintains their silence, even when there seems to be nothing left to hide. And know this above all: the mastery of silence is not about becoming invisible or undefined. It is about becoming precise in what you reveal and what you conceal. It is about understanding that every piece of information you give away is a weapon you hand to your enemy, and every secret you keep is a weapon you retain for yourself. In the chapters that follow, we will explore many aspects of strategy. But remember this: without mastery of silence, all other skills become predictable, all other advantages become vulnerable. The strongest army in the world will fall if it cannot keep its secrets. The weakest force can triumph if it masters the power of silence. Be like water. This is not merely a poetic phrase. It is the deepest principle of strategic warfare I have discovered in all my centuries of battle. Water adapts to any container, penetrates any weakness, wears away the hardest stone, yet cannot itself be grasped or struck. This is the nature of perfect adaptability, and it is the key to invincible strategy. Listen carefully, for I am about to share with you the deepest truths about adaptability that I have gathered through countless campaigns. The first and most crucial understanding is this: fixed forms lead to defeat. Fixed strategies invite disaster. Fixed thinking ensures destruction. Only that which can change shape, alter course, and transform itself can truly remain undefeated. I once conquered a supposedly invincible fortress without a single casualty. How? Not through force or siege, but through perfect adaptability. When they expected an attack from the east, I was in the west. When they prepared for siege, I engaged in trade. When they fortified against armies, I sent merchants. Like water, I flowed around their strengths until I found myself inside their walls. Here is the method I use to master adaptability. First, eliminate all fixed notions about how things must be done. Every certainty is a limitation, every formula a weakness. Second, develop the ability to read situations as they truly are, not as they supposedly should be. Third, cultivate the power to transform your approach instantly when circumstances change. Consider this fundamental truth: nature's greatest power is not in its force, but in its adaptability. The mighty oak that refuses to bend breaks in the storm. The flexible bamboo that bows to the wind survives. This is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength. But remember this crucial principle: true adaptability is not mere reaction. The amateur changes course with every new pressure. Like a leaf blown by the wind, the master adapts with purpose. Like a river that changes course yet always flows toward its destination. Let me share another secret about adaptability that few ever grasp. The highest form of adaptability looks like its opposite. I have won battles by appearing rigid when I was fluid, by seeming predictable when I was transforming, by looking weak when I was becoming strong. True adaptability includes the ability to appear unadaptable when necessary. Consider this practice. Before settling on any strategy, examine it from every angle. How could it fail? How could circumstances change? What assumptions does it rely on? Then build into your strategy the capacity to transform at any point. The perfect plan is not one that cannot fail. It is one that can become something else when failure threatens. Here is a truth that has served me well. Adaptability must exist at every level. Your weapons must be adaptable. Your tactics must be adaptable. Your thinking must be adaptable. Even your goals must be adaptable, for sometimes the greatest victory comes from recognizing that your original objective is no longer the best one. You must also understand this: different situations require different types of adaptation. Sometimes you must adapt quickly, like water flash freezing into ice. Sometimes You must adapt slowly, like water wearing away stone. Sometimes you must adapt invisibly, like water seeping through soil. The master strategist knows which form of adaptation each moment demands. Consider how I use this principle. When I plan a campaign, I create not one strategy, but a network of possibilities. Each plan can transform into several others. Each position can serve multiple purposes. Each resource can be used in different ways. This is not indecision. It is the highest form of preparation. But here is the deepest truth about adaptability. Perfect adaptability requires perfect awareness. You must see reality exactly as it is, free from wish or fear. You must sense changes as they begin, not after they have already transformed the battlefield. You must know when to hold form and when to flow like water. Remember this: adaptability is not just about changing, it is about changing correctly. The amateur adapts randomly, hoping to find the right form. The master adapts precisely, knowing exactly what form each situation requires. This knowledge comes only through deep understanding and careful observation. Here is another truth that most never grasp. The greatest power of adaptability lies not in changing yourself, but in changing the nature of conflict itself. I have won battles by transforming wars into negotiations, enemies into allies, disadvantages into opportunities. This is the supreme level of strategic adaptability. And know this above all: the mastery of adaptability is not about becoming weak or uncertain. It is about achieving a state of such perfect flexibility that no force can break you, no situation can trap you, no enemy can defeat you. Like water, you become both the softest and the most irresistible thing in existence. In the chapters that follow, we will explore many aspects of strategy. But remember this: without mastery of adaptability, all other skills become brittle, all other advantages become vulnerable. The strongest army in the world will fall if it cannot adapt. The weakest force can triumph if it masters the art of transformation. There is a force more powerful than any weapon, more decisive than any strategy, more important than any position. It is the spirit of your warriors, what we call morale. I have seen mighty armies crumble when their spirit broke, and I have watched small forces achieve impossible victories because their spirit remained unshakable. This is the power of morale, and it is the foundation upon which all victory is built. Listen carefully, for I am about to share with you the deepest truths about morale that I have gathered through centuries of warfare. The first and most crucial understanding is this: morale is not just a feeling, it is a force, as real as gravity, as powerful as fire, as decisive as the sharpest blade. I once defeated an army that outnumbered mine 10-1 without fighting a single battle. How? By understanding that their superior numbers meant nothing once their spirit was broken. I targeted their morale with the precision of an archer, attacking not their bodies, but their confidence, not their positions, but their certainty, not their strength, but their will to use it. Here is the method I use to master morale. First, understand that every warrior has 3 battles to fight: one with the enemy, one with circumstance, and one with themselves. Of these, the battle with self is the most crucial. Win that, and the others become easier. Lose it, and no advantage can save you. Consider this fundamental truth: morale moves like water through an army. High morale flows from leader to soldier, from veteran to recruit, from victory to victory. Low morale seeps like poison through ranks, turning strength to weakness, courage to fear, determination to doubt. The wise commander manages these flows as carefully as they manage their supplies. But remember this crucial principle: morale is not built in the moment of battle. It is built in the countless moments before, in the quiet times of preparation, in the small victories of training, in the bonds forged between warriors. When battle comes, you do not create morale, you reveal it. Let me share another secret about morale that few ever grasp. The highest form of morale is not blind confidence or foolish bravery. It is a clear-eyed certainty that comes from perfect preparation, perfect understanding, and perfect trust in one's companions and commanders. This is the morale that cannot be broken because it is based on truth, not illusion. Consider this practice. Before any major campaign, assess the spirit of your forces as carefully as you count their numbers. Look for signs of doubt, seeds of fear, sources of strength. Then work to reinforce what builds morale and eliminate what destroys it. This is not mere motivation, it is strategic necessity. Here is a truth that has served me well. Different warriors draw their morale from different sources. Some find strength in victory, others in challenge. Some are motivated by reward, others by duty. Some fight for glory, others for their companions. The master commander understands these differences and nurtures each warrior's spirit in the way it needs. You must also understand this. Morale has its own rhythm, its own cycle of strength and vulnerability. There are times when spirit naturally rises, and times when it naturally falls. The wise leader works with these rhythms, planning difficult tasks for times of high morale and using periods of low morale for rest and rebuilding. Consider how I use this principle. When I prepare for battle, I create what I call circles of spirit. The innermost circle is the individual warrior's confidence. The next circle is the trust between companions. The outer circle is the entire army's belief in its cause and its leadership. Each circle must be strong, for weakness in any one can break the others. But here is the deepest truth about morale. The greatest source of spirit is not victory, it is meaning. Warriors who understand why they fight, who believe in what they do, who see purpose in their struggles, these warriors cannot be defeated by mere force. Their spirit becomes a shield that no weapon can pierce, a strength that no enemy can break. Remember this, morale is like a flame. It must be carefully tended, constantly fed, vigilantly protected. The amateur commander thinks of morale only when it fails. The master tends to it always, building it in times of peace, preserving it in times of hardship, strengthening it in times of victory. Here is another truth that most never grasp. The enemy's morale is as important as your own. I have won battles by strengthening my troops' spirit while simultaneously undermining my enemy's will to fight. This is the perfect victory. When the enemy's morale breaks before their bodies tire, when their spirit fails before their strength gives out. And know this above all, the mastery of morale is not about creating false confidence or temporary courage. It is about building such deep, unshakable spirit that no challenge seems impossible, no setback seems final, no enemy seems invincible. This is the foundation of all victory. In the chapters that follow, we will explore many aspects of strategy. But remember this, without mastery of morale, all other advantages become meaningless. The strongest army in the world will fall if its spirit breaks. The weakest force can triumph if its morale remains unshakable. In all my years of warfare, I have learned this immutable truth. An army divided in purpose is already defeated, no matter its size or strength. Unity of command is not merely about hierarchy or chain of authority. It is about the perfect alignment of will, purpose, and action. When this unity is achieved, even a small force becomes invincible. Listen carefully, for I am about to share with you the deepest truths about unity of command that I have gathered through centuries of battle. The first and most crucial understanding is this: every internal division, every competing purpose, every conflicting impulse becomes a weapon that your enemy can use against you, even if they don't know it exists. I once watched a powerful army destroy itself without my forces striking a single blow. How? They had 5 talented generals, each brilliant in their own right, but each pulling in a different direction. Their strategies contradicted each other, their orders confused. Their troops, their actions undermined each other's efforts. They didn't need an enemy. They defeated themselves. Here is the method I use to master unity of command. First, understand that true unity begins in the mind. Every thought, every intention, every decision must align with a single, clear purpose. Second, ensure that this clarity flows unbroken through every level of command. Third, eliminate anything that creates division, doubt, or competing loyalties. Consider this fundamental truth. Unity of command is like the flow of water in a river. When all currents move in the same direction, their power is unstoppable. But when currents conflict, when waters pull in different directions, the river's power is wasted in turbulence and chaos. But remember this crucial principle. Unity does not mean uniformity. I do not want my generals to be identical in thought and action. I want their diverse talents, their unique insights, their individual strengths, but all flowing in the same direction, all serving the same purpose, all part of the same unified strategy. Let me share another secret about unity of command that few ever grasp. The highest form of unity cannot be imposed from above. It must grow from shared understanding, shared purpose, and shared trust. When I achieve perfect unity in my forces, it is not because they fear my authority, but because they understand so completely that they naturally act as one. Consider this practice. Before any major campaign, gather your commanders and ensure that each can state the objective, the strategy, and their role in it so clearly that no questions remain. Then have them do the same with their subordinates, and so on down the line. Any point where understanding breaks down is a point where unity will fail. Here is a truth that has served me well. Unity of command must exist in time as well as structure. Today's orders must align with yesterday's purpose and tomorrow's goals. I have seen armies fall into confusion, not because their current commands conflicted, but because they constantly shifted direction, creating uncertainty and hesitation in their ranks. You must also understand this. Different levels of command require different types of unity. At the highest level, unity must exist in purpose and strategy. At the middle levels, unity must exist in coordination and timing. At the lowest levels, unity must exist in action and execution. Each level's unity supports the others. Consider how I use this principle. When I plan a campaign, I create what I call circles of understanding. The innermost circle contains the ultimate purpose be known to all. The next circle contains the strategy understood by commanders. The outer circle contains the specific actions, clear to those who must perform them. Each circle aligns with and supports the others. But here is the deepest truth about unity of command. The greatest enemy of unity is not disagreement, it is unclear thinking. When purposes are vague, when strategies are ambiguous, when orders are unclear, unity becomes impossible. Clarity is the foundation of unity, and unity is the foundation of victory. Remember this, unity of command is like the blade of a sword. It must be forged through shared understanding, tempered through shared experience, and sharpened through shared purpose. Any flaw in this process creates a weakness that can shatter the whole. Here is another truth that most never grasp. Unity of command extends beyond military hierarchy. It must exist between purpose and action, between word and deed, between promise and performance. When these align perfectly, they create a force that no enemy can resist. And know this above all, the mastery of unity is not about creating mindless obedience or enforced conformity. It is about achieving such perfect alignment of purpose, understanding, and action that every part of your force naturally strengthens every other part. This is the ultimate force multiplier. In the chapters that follow, we will explore many aspects of strategy. But remember this, without unity of command, all other advantages become sources of confusion. All other strengths become points of weakness. The strongest army in the world will fall if it fights against itself. The weakest force can triumph if it achieves perfect unity of purpose and action. The supreme art of war is not about matching strength against strength. It is about striking where the enemy is weakest when they least expect it in ways they cannot defend against. This understanding has won me more battles than all the armies in China. Yet I watch as warrior after warrior waste their strength attacking where the enemy is strongest, seeking glory instead of victory. Listen carefully, for I am about to share with you the deepest truths about exploiting weakness that I have gathered through centuries of warfare. The first and most crucial understanding is this: every strength contains within it the seeds of weakness. Every fortress has its hidden entrance. Every perfect defense has its blind spot. Your task is not to break down walls, it is to find the gaps between them. I once defeated an enemy whose defenses were considered perfect. How? Not by attacking their walls, which were impregnable, or challenging their army, which was mighty. Instead, I observed that their very perfection had made them rigid. Their very strength had made them predictable. Like water, I flowed through the spaces between their strengths, turning their own power against them. Here is the method I use to master the exploitation of weakness. First, understand that weakness is not always obvious. Sometimes it hides behind strength. Sometimes it masquerades as power. Second, learn to see systems, not just components. Every connection is a potential point of failure. Third, develop the patience to wait until weakness ripens into vulnerability. Consider this fundamental truth: the most dangerous weakness is the one the enemy doesn't know they have. I have won battles by exploiting weaknesses my opponents considered strengths. Their discipline became rigidity. Their courage became recklessness. Their loyalty became blindness. Each virtue, taken to extreme, became a vulnerability. But remember this crucial principle: the exploitation of weakness is not about finding a single flaw, it is about understanding how small weaknesses combine into critical vulnerabilities. Like a master physician, you must understand how minor ailments in different parts of the body can create a fatal condition when they interact. Let me share another secret about exploiting weakness that few ever grasp. The greatest weakness often lies not in what the enemy cannot do, but in what they cannot stop doing. Their habits, their patterns, their unquestioned assumptions, these become chains that bind them more surely than any rope or iron. Consider this practice. Before any engagement, create what I call a map of vulnerabilities. Look not just for obvious weaknesses, but for strengths that could become weaknesses, for virtues that could become vices, for advantages that could become traps. Then look for ways these vulnerabilities connect and reinforce each other. Here is a truth that has served me well. Timing is crucial in the exploitation of weakness. A vulnerability that would be fatal at one moment might be meaningless at another. I have won battles by waiting patiently until the perfect moment when multiple weaknesses aligned, creating an opportunity that could not have existed before or after. You must also understand this: different types of weakness require different methods of exploitation. Some weaknesses must be attacked directly, like a spear thrust to the heart. Others must be approached indirectly, like poison working through the blood. Still others must be cultivated, like a farmer tending crops until they are ripe for harvest. Consider how I use this principle. When I plan a campaign, I create layers of exploitation. The outer layer targets obvious weaknesses. This is what the enemy expects and prepares for. The next layer exploits the weaknesses created by their preparations. The deepest layer takes advantage of weaknesses they cannot defend against because they cannot see them. But here is the deepest truth about exploiting weakness. The perfect exploitation often appears to be something else entirely. I have won victories where my enemies never realized their weaknesses were being targeted. They thought they were winning until the moment they lost, thought they were strong until the moment they broke. Remember this: weakness, like water, follows predictable patterns. It collects in low places, gathers behind barriers, accumulates where attention is lacking. The master strategist understands these patterns and uses them to predict where vulnerabilities will appear even before they become visible. Here is another truth that most never grasp. The exploitation of weakness must be complete. It is not enough to find a vulnerability. You must understand how to use it to achieve decisive victory. Many warriors discover their enemy's weaknesses, but lack the strategic depth to turn this knowledge into triumph. And know this above all, the mastery of exploiting weakness is not about being cruel or ruthless. It is about being precise and efficient. It is about achieving victory with the least expenditure of force, the minimal loss of life, the smallest possible cost. This is not merely practical. It is the highest form of strategic wisdom. In the chapters that follow, we will explore many aspects of strategy, but remember this, without mastery of exploiting weakness, all other skills become mere force. All other advantages become mere numbers. The strongest army in the world will fall if it cannot identify and target critical vulnerabilities. The weakest force can triumph if it masters the art of striking where the enemy is soft. In all warfare, there exists a force more powerful than numbers, more decisive than weapons, more important than position. It is momentum, the ability to turn small advantages into overwhelming victory. I have watched mighty armies fall because they could not sustain their momentum, and I have seen weak forces triumph because they understood how to build and maintain it. Listen carefully, for I am about to share with you the deepest truths about momentum that I have gathered through centuries of battle. The first and most crucial understanding is this: momentum is not just the speed of your advance or the power of your strike. It is the accumulated force of every advantage, every success, every small victory building upon itself until it becomes unstoppable. I once conquered a kingdom 3 times the size of my territory without fighting a single major battle. How? By understanding momentum. Each small victory created opportunities for larger ones. Each minor success weakened my enemies. Resolve while strengthening my position. Like a boulder rolling down a mountain, my force gathered speed and power with every turn. Here is the method I use to master momentum. First, understand that momentum begins in the mind. It starts with the belief in inevitable victory, grows through small successes, and becomes unstoppable through sustained achievement. Second, learn to see how small advantages connect and reinforce each other. Third, develop the discipline to maintain momentum once it begins. Consider this fundamental truth. Momentum, like water, can flow in any direction. It can work for you or against you. The skilled commander knows how to direct this flow, how to channel it, how to use it to wear away resistance, just as water wears away stone, not through sudden force, but through persistent, accumulated pressure. But remember this crucial principle. Momentum must be built before it can be used. Many warriors try to create momentum through bold strikes or dramatic actions. This is like trying to start an avalanche by throwing a single stone. True momentum builds gradually, systematically, inevitably. Let me share another secret about momentum that few ever grasp. The highest form of momentum is invisible to its target. I have won victories where my enemies never saw their defeat approaching. Each small loss seemed insignificant to them. Each minor setback appeared recoverable, until suddenly they found themselves in an impossible position with no path to victory. Consider this practice. Before any campaign, create what I call a chain of victories. Plan not just for individual successes, but for how each success can lead to the next, how each advantage can create new opportunities, how each victory can set up an even greater triumph. This is not mere planning. It is the architecture of momentum. Here is a truth that has served me well. Different types of momentum require different methods of cultivation. Strategic momentum builds through position and advantage. Tactical momentum builds through timing and execution. Psychological momentum builds through perception and belief. The master strategist understands how to build and combine all these forms. You must also understand this. Momentum has its own ecology. It requires resources to sustain it, space to develop it, and time to build it. I have seen countless warriors waste their momentum by advancing faster than their supplies, expanding beyond their control, or striking before their advantages had fully developed. Consider how I use this principle. When I build momentum, I create what I call circles of success. The innermost circle contains immediate victories, small but achievable. The next circle contains advantages that these victories make possible. The outer circle contains the ultimate triumphs that become inevitable once the momentum is fully established. But here is the deepest truth about momentum. The perfect momentum appears effortless to others. I've won campaigns where observers said I was lucky, that victory fell into my lap, that circumstances favored me. They could not see the careful cultivation of advantage, the precise timing of actions, the systematic building of momentum that made these victories inevitable. Remember this: momentum, like a river, follows the path of least resistance. The amateur tries to force momentum, pushing directly toward their goal. The master understands how to shape the battlefield so that momentum naturally flows where it is needed, gathering force and power along the way. Here is another truth that most never grasp. Momentum must be protected as carefully as it is built. A single mistake, a moment of carelessness, a small oversight can break momentum that took months to establish. This is why I teach my generals to be most vigilant when victory seems most certain. And know this above all: the mastery of momentum is not about being aggressive or relentless. It is about being systematic and inevitable. It is about creating situations where each success naturally leads to greater success, where victory builds upon victory until triumph becomes a natural consequence rather than a momentary achievement. In the chapters that follow, we will explore many aspects of strategy, but remember this: without mastery of momentum, all other advantages become temporary, all other successes become isolated. The strongest army in the world will fall if it cannot sustain its momentum. The weakest force can triumph if it masters the art of building and maintaining unstoppable progress. Victory is not truly yours until the last ember of resistance has been extinguished, until the last seed of future conflict has been eliminated, until your triumph is so complete that renewal of hostilities becomes unthinkable. This is the art of ending war decisively, and it is perhaps the most crucial skill of all, yet the one most often neglected. Listen carefully, for I am about to share with you the deepest truths about decisive victory that I have gathered through centuries of warfare. The first and most crucial understanding is this: the end of a war is not marked by the last battle, but by the establishment of a new reality so stable, so inevitable, that further resistance becomes meaningless. I once achieved such a complete victory that 3 generations passed before anyone dared to challenge my established order. How? Not through brutality or total destruction, but through perfect strategic completion. Every potential source of future conflict was addressed. Every defeated enemy was given a stake in the new peace. Every victory was transformed into a foundation for lasting stability. Here is the method I use to master decisive endings. First, understand that true victory must address not just the immediate conflict, but its roots and potential future manifestations. Second, recognize that the end of war is actually the beginning of a new order that must be carefully crafted. Third, develop the wisdom to know when and how to transform military triumph into lasting peace. Consider this fundamental truth: the most dangerous moment in any war is often the moment of victory. This is when armies grow careless, when commanders become arrogant, when the seeds of future conflict are inadvertently sown. The amateur celebrates victory. The master uses victory to create peace. But remember this crucial principle: decisive victory does not mean total destruction. Often, the most complete triumph is one that leaves your former enemies intact but transformed, no longer willing to fight, no longer able to threaten, no longer interested in renewing conflict. This is not mercy, it is strategy. Let me share another secret about decisive victory that few ever grasp. The highest form of ending conflict is to make your victory appear not as defeat to your enemy, but as the best possible outcome for all concerned. I have won wars where my enemies themselves defended the new order I established because I made it serve their interests as well as mine. Consider this practice. Before concluding any campaign, create what I call a map of peace. Identify every source of potential future conflict. Plan how each will be addressed. Design systems that make peace more profitable than war, stability more attractive than chaos. This is not mere politics. It is strategic necessity. Here is a truth that has served me well. Different victories require different forms of conclusion. Sometimes power must be demonstrated unmistakably. Sometimes generosity proves more decisive than force. Sometimes the key to lasting peace lies not in what you take, but in what you allow others to keep. You must also understand this. The end of war has its own momentum, its own timing, its own rhythm. Rush it, and you leave unresolved tensions that will spark future conflicts. Delay it, and you waste the opportunity to establish lasting peace. The master strategist knows exactly when and how to transform victory into permanent stability. Consider how I use this principle. When I conclude a campaign, I create layers of peace. The outer layer is the immediate cessation of hostilities. The next layer is the establishment of new patterns of interaction. The deepest layer is the transformation of relationships and interests, so that peace becomes self-sustaining. But here is the deepest truth about decisive endings. The perfect victory often looks incomplete to those who do not understand strategy. I have ended wars in ways that seemed lenient to my generals, only to have them understand years later how that apparent leniency had created unshakable stability. Remember this: the end of war is like the healing of a wound. Rush it, and you risk infection. Neglect it, and you risk reopening. The master strategist tends to victory as carefully as a physician tends to healing, ensuring that the recovery is complete and lasting. Here is another truth that most never grasp. The conclusion of war must address not just physical realities, but psychological ones. I have seen victories undone because while they changed the material situation, they failed to transform the minds and hearts of the defeated. True peace requires both. And know this above all: the mastery of ending war is not about achieving absolute dominance. It is about creating a new reality that all parties choose to maintain. It is about transforming victory not into mere submission, but into a stable peace that serves everyone's interests better than renewed conflict ever could. In these chapters, we have explored many aspects of strategy, but remember this final truth: without mastery of decisive victory, all other skills lead only to temporary triumph. All other successes become merely preludes to future conflicts. The strongest army in the world will fight endless wars if it cannot transform victory into peace. The weakest force can achieve lasting triumph if it masters the art of ending conflict decisively. May these teachings serve you well. Apply them with wisdom, execute them with precision, and may your victories be not just complete, but lasting. For in the end, the greatest victory is not the one that destroys your enemy, but the one that makes enemies unnecessary.